I'm Annette McCoy, and with me this morning is Peter Whitfield. Peter is, as a lot of you will know, is Rosemary's son. And Rosemary sends her apologies because she had a message this morning to say a long-time friend and her husband were going to call in for morning coffee, which was a lovely surprise. And how I'm very, very grateful, Peter, for you to be here so that we can.
Thanks, Annette. A lovely surprise for some. I think she's just sort of dumped me in the deep end and said she left a cake in the oven or something. Decided that anyway. No, she has got a friend visiting, but no, It is lovely to be here, and I can say really bad things about her now that she's not here. Unless she tunes into the. Is this recorded? Can she tune in later?
Yeah, she will be able to.
Oh, Mum, you're so wonderful. I love you so much.
And indeed you do. What a wonderful, wonderful woman Rosemary is. She's produced some wonderful children as well.
Well, some of them, you'll have to introduce me to them, but yes.
I believe I know one.
I was just, you just reminded me that I run a philosophy cafe, and I know we're going to be talking about grief.
Mm-hmm.
But it just came to mind then that you were saying Mum's a wonderful woman, and you too, Annette, obviously just brilliant beings. And in Australia, before a meeting and before an event, people recognize and acknowledge the elders of the First Nations people, past, present, and future.
Mm-hmm.
And it occurred to me that it's just a really beautiful practice. And in society today, growing old, there is this tendency to feel like you're irrelevant, that you don't matter. And in fact, not only that you become a problem, even a burden on the healthcare system and on the economy, and that respecting our elders, and it doesn't have to be limited to a particular nation or a body of people. I mean, there are elders in every society. I mean, you think about Nelson Mandela, who became president at 77 and did that until he was 81, 82 years old. The Queen Elizabeth, I mean, she did that job until she died. And, we look at the newspaper and the greatest story is about old people are that those who at 92 can ride their bike to the local shops. I mean, it's just horrendous that if we buy into that the greatest achievement we can give as an elder of society is that we can hop on a bicycle. And and when you were saying about my mum, I mean, people phone her from all over the world to get counseling. And, she's elderly and can hardly walk and quite frail physically. But what she offers to those who need assistance, and she comes alive, but the people that she helps through her counseling. And, you know me, I'm not a big convert to the angels and those who don't have bodies, but because I've never met anybody who hasn't got a body, but that doesn't mean that they don't exist and they can't help people. And through her channeling and the like, she really does contribute. And I think there is so much that elderly people do offer. And they forget. I think they forget just because, they can't TikTok or they don't take selfies. That doesn't mean that there is no. So I think for those who are aging, it's a great lesson not to buy into this idea that I'm becoming irrelevant or I'm a problem or I'm a burden. So anyway, that was just when you were saying Mum's a great person, and she is a really beautiful, talented lady. And, and I think we all have, you look at young people today, I'm just going to go on and on and on. So look at young people today and they've got real problems. that they need counseling and they need medication and they need, the suicide rate's higher. And you think about what our grandparents went through.
Right.
Both my grandparents went through, I mean, you want some real hardship. I mean, geez, it's, wondering whether your children will come back from war is a fairly difficult thing to face that they went through. And, that's something that steadfastness of resolve and fortitude is there's so much knowledge and ideas out there, but the actual practical experience of for the young people is of
don't you think, or do you think that it's different challenges?
It is different. It is different, but it's very difficult for a young person to say no now. Like I was, one of my daughters has a friend who's a vegan, and he tells her, oh, I'm vegan. Anyway, she met him at a Kentucky Fried Chicken shop. And he said, oh, well, I'm vegan sometimes, because he, has. Now, to me, like that sort of got all my sort of, you're either vegan or not vegan. But, it's sort of like, well, I want to be a vegan. I'll be a vegan when it suits me.
Yes.
That doesn't engender. See, young people can do whatever they want. They have whatever they want. And that seems to create a wishy-washiness. There's not I'm being very harsh here, but Jordan Peterson, his 12, and you don't have to like him or dislike him, but his 12 rules for life. His first rule of life is stand up straight with your shoulders back. And it's just a great letter. And young ones are going, oh, yes. Well, how do you stand up straight with your shoulders back? Well, you need to practice. And prohibition throughout the ages has been like if you were Jewish, you weren't allowed to eat pork or shellfish, and if you were from an Islamic religion, it was the same. If you're Christian, you didn't eat fish on Fridays. There's all these things that you didn't do. I mean, you didn't lie. You spoke the truth. That was something you did. Now it's like, oh, it just doesn't matter. But it does matter because you see that if you there's a great story about the parrot and the cat.
Right.
And the parrot learnt all these wise sayings, like speak the truth and love everybody. It learned Sanskrit and it could quote the Vedas and it could say all these things, right? And it was just so, be free and happy and, all this stuff. Tatvamasi and, it was, the parrot could just mouth it off. But when the cat came along, it went, ah, ah, ah. So it didn't have the ideas were there, the knowledge was there, but the experience of actually putting that into practice wasn't. And I think this is where elderly people, those who have been through the mill, they have authority in what they say. So, and then if you decide, okay, I'm not going to eat meat anymore, well, don't eat meat. If you say I'm going to eat meat 4 days a week and then not eat meat for 5 days a week and then 2 days, well, that's okay. But, it's just this wishy-washiness.
Yeah.
And it's debilitating.
It sounds as though you think it's generational, whereas I think people generally, some, and I put it down to awareness, because some people are more aware than others. And so some of us are aware of our speak and how we use language, others aren't. That young woman who is vegan 5 days a week and not for 2 or whenever it suits her, I wonder if she realizes what she's doing, what she's thinking.
Yeah, look, it's once upon a time, people used to keep their word. And now, now it's, are we going out on Friday? And 5 minutes, that's a text, oh, I might be there. And there's like, you just sort of.
It's fascinating you mentioned that, because
yes.
I was with someone a couple of days ago who said she has a friend who they'll set something up, and then invariably this friend will say at the last minute, oh, I can't do it. And it's a pattern. I mean, let's face it, we all have a situation. Look, your mum this morning had full intentions of coming on until 8:45. So there are exceptions, of course, but the thing is, if it's a pattern with someone, it's like, hey, it's the same as if somebody is always late. How do we deal with that? Do we tell them it's going, in fact, you need to be here, and give them a different time to everyone else? Or do you simply know that, oh, well, this person's going to be late? Sometimes it really does matter, because especially if the person's driving you to a function, it's rather embarrassing or it can be, if you're late, or if you're missing part of a show because this person is continually late.
I mean, you look at Queen Elizabeth. I mean, she turned up to everything. Like she was there. If she said she was going to be there, she was there. I mean, what an incredible commitment. And she was loved for it. I think for her Jubilee, her last one, she was so sick that she couldn't make it. And they put out a release, the palace put out a release saying that she was very sorry that she couldn't make this final celebration because she was feeling uncomfortable. And that it was words to that effect. But when the Queen says she was, if somebody wrote to you and said, "Oh, I can't come because I'm feeling uncomfortable," you think, "Oh, you just don't want to go, or you don't like me anymore." But when she said, you knew that she was really suffering.
Yes.
But that comes with, I mean, it's what a strength of character. But because I mean, imagine. But these, I just see that there are so many young people today that have so many problems that they are looking for. They go into therapy. There's a great scene in Crocodile Dundee. Remember the movie Crocodile Dundee?
I do.
Mick Dundee is Paul Hogan. He goes over to New York, and he hears this girl talking over there, and this is the late 80s, and she was rich society New York woman, and she was saying that she had seen a psychiatrist, and Paul Hogan gets really embarrassed because he walks away and he goes, "Oh, I didn't know she was nuts. Like when I was talking to her, I didn't know she was crazy." Anyway, the girl says, no, she's not crazy. Everybody over here sees psychiatrists. And Paul Hogan says, well, and she says, "Well, what do you do in outback Australia?" He says, "Well, I tell Bruce, and Bruce tells Billy, and Billy tells everybody else, and then there's no problem anymore." She said, well, here they have psychiatrists, and Hogan says, "Well," Mick Dundee says, "hasn't she got any mates?" And it's haven't you got any friends? And then the girl says, "Yeah, we could all do with some friends. We could all do with some mates." So, it does seem to be quite superficial at the moment. That there's this virtual texting and virtual friends, and no deep, penetrating or substantial experience of life. There's an experience in saying no to things. Like, no, I won't do that because that's the wrong thing to do. I will speak the truth. So anyway,
you're mentioning the need for friends. And our conversation, of course, or our topic this morning was dealing with grief.
Yes.
How important is it for us to have friends? And I realise that it's in times of adversity that we realise how much we are loved, how much we are supported. Because when life's going along hunky-dory, well, we don't necessarily need or look for that support. And people think, oh, well, Peter's fine, Annette's fine. And then when we hit that challenge, yes, we're surrounded. I was certainly very fortunate to be surrounded by love and support, and I guess realised just how far-reaching it was.
Yes, yeah. I was, some people will know, but I recently lost my son, and he was 31. And the amount of love and care that poured in, but also stories of other people that experienced loss, was quite astounding, because you go through this loss and this grief, and you think, well, I thought that I was unique in this, situation, that nobody else can suffer as much as I do. Nobody else is, lost. My situation's completely unique, and yet the outpouring was phenomenal, and the care that was shown. I've got some cards that people sent me. I mean, they're sort of just all here. That's my son who recently passed. But I mean, this one was hand calligraphy. But
wow.
And I don't know this person. I mean, they just sent me this beautiful card, which they must have spent really quite a long time making. We're just phenomenal. I mean, there is a great story. There's always a story. There's a great story about Kisagutami and the mustard seed. And she lost a son. He was 2 years old. And she carried around the dead body, and she went up to the Buddha and said, I need some medicine to cure my son, to bring him back to life. And the Buddha said, look, I can give you medicine that will help, but you need to get some mustard seed to make the medicine. She goes, oh, that's easy. Mustard seeds, like everybody has mustard seed. And she fine. So she'll go up. She's still carrying a child that had died. And he said, wait a minute. The mustard seed has to come from a household, from a family that hasn't experienced loss. No death in the family. So she says, oh, sure. So she knocks on the first door and she says, have you got any mustard seed? And they say, yeah, sure. So they give us mustard seed. And she goes, oh, wait a minute. Have you experienced any loss? And they said, yes, our grandmother died last week. She goes, oh, no. So she gives the mustard seed back. And then she goes off to the next house, knocks on the door. Have you got any mustard seed? Yes. Have you experienced loss? Yes, our cousin died. Anyway, so she goes to the next house, and then it was a son, and then it was a father, and then it was the mother, and every house she knocked on, every single house. And then finally, she got the idea that there wasn't a household that she could knock on the door of that had not experienced death or loss in their family. So she goes back to the Buddha and she bows before him and she says, thank you. I realized that I'm not unique, and the world wasn't against me, and it wasn't just this plot to make me. And the Buddha said, yes, but the medicine wasn't for your son. The medicine was for you. So that's a great story.
It is.
You walk along the street and you see, people who are completely irrelevant, and they've all got their journey that they're going on. And grief, is part of their journey. So,
and yet when we're going through it, I can remember thinking, everyone else, it seemed everyone else was going about their normal business, and what was my normal had suddenly just come to a complete stop.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we do think, I mean, I think we do look at other people and think, oh, they're just so, lucky, or they're not going through their stuff. But
yeah.
You scratch the surface and they are. I mean, one chap wrote to me and he said he was walking on the street and his wife fell over and he caught her and she died in his arms. They're just like, incredible stories. Ram Dass, who I love, was asked to write a letter to these parents, Steve and Anita, whose daughter was just walking home from school one day, and she was only like 200 meters from home, in this sort of tranquil hamlet in southern Oregon. And the daughter was abducted and raped and murdered. And the parents, Steve and Anita, were just, I just can't imagine how horrendous, having 3 daughters myself, but even if you don't have children, you can't, seeing what's going on in the West Bank at the moment, it's just, you can't imagine going through that. Yet he wrote this letter, and I think it's one of the most beautiful letters I've ever read. Do you want me to read it to you?
That would be lovely.
So this is Ram Dass, who was he was a psych professor at Harvard University, psychologist, and he got kicked out of Harvard for taking drugs, psilocybin and LSD, with Timothy Leary at the time, and he was researching into it. But it was considered quite, at the time, very dangerous. I haven't tried it, but it was, an experimentation in discovering spirituality. And anyway, he went off to India and his name changed from Richard Alpert to Ram Dass. And in 1971, he wrote this book called Be Here Now, which was a best-selling book, and, be in the present. And then many people have sort of copied him. But as far as I can see, he was really one of the first Westerners, one of, first Americans or Europeans certainly Americans, who went to India and brought their teaching back. So he wrote this letter to these parents who'd lost their 11-year-old daughter. And he says, "Dear Steve and Anita, Rachel finished her work on earth and left the stage in a manner that leaves those of us left behind with a cry of agony in our hearts, as the fragile thread of our faith is dealt with so violently. Is anyone strong enough to stay conscious through such teachings as you are receiving? Probably very few. And even they would only have a whisper of equanimity and peace amidst the screaming trumpets of their rage, grief, horror, and desolation. I can't assuage your pain with any words, nor should I. For your pain is Rachel's legacy to you. Not that she or I would inflict such pain by choice, but there it is. And it must burn its purifying way to completion. For something in you dies when you bear the unbearable. And it is only in that dark night of the soul that you are prepared to see as God sees and to love as God loves. Now is the time to let your grief find expression. No false strength. Now is the time to sit quietly and speak to Rachel and thank her for being with you these few years and encourage her to go on with whatever her work is, knowing that you will grow in compassion and wisdom from this experience. In my heart, I know that you will see that she will meet again and again with you and recognize the many ways in which you have known each other. And when you meet, you will know in a flash what now is not given to you to know, why this had to be the way it was. Our rational minds can never understand what has happened, but our hearts, if we keep them open to God, will find their own intuitive way. Rachel came through you to do her work on earth, which includes the manner of her death. Now her soul is free, and the love that you can share with her is invulnerable to the winds of changing time and space. In that deep love, include me. In love, Ram Dass.
Such wisdom and understanding.
Yes. Great, great love. And, you know, you can think of these people who have been through incredible suffering and incredible loss. I mean, like Nelson Mandela, you know, the former president of South Africa, he was 27 years in prison. Invited to his inauguration those who had incarcerated him. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist. He was a Holocaust survivor. And despite incredible suffering in the Nazi concentration camps, he wrote this book called Man's Search for Meaning. And his description of life there was just incredible. But he later developed a whole branch of psychology based on his discovery there, which has helped, you know, hundreds of thousands of people. The Sheryl Sandberg, who was the chief operating officer of Facebook, she experienced the sudden loss of her husband in 2015. And she openly shared her journey and founded this charity called Option B to help others build resilience. I mean, and if these things didn't happen, these people may not have, you know, been who they were.
Precisely. Yes. I look at the Morecambes and there are other parents who have suffered the loss of a child who then use that experience to then help others.
Yes, yes. And there is a unifying freedom that comes in being with other people that have experienced what you've experienced, or, you know, been through similar kind of the deep dark nights of the soul, as it were.
So it's interesting, isn't it, the topic of grief and where it leads us. And there were words that you used this morning earlier in saying that it's through the grief that we learn. What was I loved it how you said the topic, because in sharing grief there are definitely moments of joy when we gather and share stories about the person who has departed. It's the bringing together of friends, so that it's the reunion, and I think that's one of the great aspects, the positives that come out of any form of memorial service. Yes, because people gather and relive moments, relive experiences, and I'm sure the departed soul looks down with a big smile. Oh, this is what I've been able to create.
Yes, and we do tend to remember the best qualities of the person when they have left. We don't actually say, "Oh, you was a rotten, selfish old so and so," but we do remember their good qualities. It's and it's a lesson for us to look for the best qualities in others who haven't left us yet.
True.
You know, like we were talking about Mum. If you're still listening, Mum, at this point, you know, I'm going to just talk about all your bad qualities now.
Has she got them?
Oh, that's lovely, Annette. That's really nice. And you know, you don't you don't, like, they're just so insignificant. And I think this is why it's so tragic to, you know, if the headlines in the newspapers are that this, you know, 92-year-old person can do a handstand. I mean, it's just so condescending and you know, we think it, you buy into it. It's a bit like, you know, in the old days, they used to say things like noble savages. I mean, it's so horrendous. It's such a horrendous thing to say about, about a human being, that they're a noble savage. I mean, just awful. And to say that an old person, the best that they can do is, I mean, not that that's bad that they could do a handstand, which is fine, but I mean, defining a whole human being into the ability to, I don't know, stand on one leg or something, it's just, they're much greater than that.
Right.
And I think old people shouldn't buy into that, because when we do give the eulogies, we know when they're gone, we don't remember the facts that they could, whistle or something. It's just
It's interesting how you look at that. I was thinking, well, how amazing that a 92-year-old is able to do that physical feat. And maybe, yes, that's.
but it's sort of like, I've got a 4-year-old grandson and a 2.5-year-old grandson. When they start to walk, you say to them, wow, you're so clever. That's so good. I mean, imagine saying that to an old person. Wow, you're so clever. You can walk. That's really good. I mean, I was at my son's memorial Australian celebration last week. And there was a chap who was about pushing 90. And I found myself starting to talk to him like he was, a 3-year-old. And he was just talking to me with just like, he was clearly much sharper than I was, more intelligent, more with it. And I just thought, wow. And then I just let all these ideas go about, I mean, he couldn't walk, like he was in a wheelchair and sticks and things, and was very shaky, but God, he was on the ball. And what he was saying about my son and the qualities of my son were just so uplifting and inspiring. In fact, his erstwhile headmaster of Shaw School, which is a great school here in Sydney, my son was in a wheelchair, and he was the first disabled boy to go to this school. And the headmaster said in his talk, he gave a talk on him. He said he'd been teaching for 30 years, and 17 of them were at Shaw School. And he said that in that 30 years, only one boy smiled at him every time he saw him. There were other boys who would smile at the headmaster, if they felt like it, but there were a lot of other boys who would look away. But my son looked at him, and, he couldn't walk or talk, but he just looked at the headmaster and just beamed love at him. And the headmaster said it was just such a memorable occasion. And they had this, because he was in a wheelchair, and when he reached sixth form or year 12, they had the sixth form camp that all the boys went on. And there were so many occupational health and safety issues in taking my son Luke. So they would sort of, his house tutor asked him, did he want to go? And he said, of course he wanted to go, didn't want to be left out. But so they had to organize extra staff to go, and that required extra money. Anyway, they put themselves up like a week to raise the thousands of dollars they needed to pay for all of this to fit. Anyway, they raised it in a couple of hours. And they were talking about the day when, this is his housemaster, Kelly Papworth. She gave a talk about the day that he was going on camp. And she let the house, he was in Emery House, there's about 14 houses or 16 houses or something. And she let the houseboys know that he was leaving. And she told the boys, And that because he was so excited about it, she said to the houseboys, why don't you line up and make a bit of a tunnel for him to go through? And he wasn't sort of expecting it anyway. The word got out that not only the Emery House boys, all of the boys heard about it, and then all the teachers heard about it. The whole school heard about it. The canteen staff heard about it. So when they're just leaving for camp, and the whole school went out and made a tunnel and cheered and clapped for him to go on the camp. She spoke about it as being the most memorable moment of her life. And, you know, you talk about elderly people and what they can contribute. And he was a boy who couldn't speak, couldn't walk, couldn't talk. He had to get fed through a tube in his stomach. The cost on the healthcare system was absolutely horrendous. And you take a moment like that not it just influenced his life, but the lives of thousands of boys and parents and teachers and you see that and he couldn't do a handstand or ride a bike, and yet, what a gift. So I think if you've got any elderly listeners out there, they don't buy into this idea that you're becoming irrelevant or a burden, because you don't have to.
Absolutely.
And the idea that if you've got a lost one or a loved one has departed, the idea that you're alone in your suffering is just not true. Because we go through our stuff, and other people go through their stuff. And together we're all just walking each other home, which is a quote from Ram Dass. It's a beautiful quote.
And the Chinese one about the bird.
Yes.
That is so wise. I can remember a little bit of it.
Sure. It says that the birds of sorrow, you can't prevent them from flying over your head. So they fly over your head. But you can prevent them from building a nest in your hair. So, the sorrow is going to be there, but you don't have to cling on to it. Sometimes I notice myself something, you feel like you should milk it. Oh yeah, I've lost my son, I can milk it. People should feel sorry for me. And, that's just, that idea comes up and it's like a dog returning to its own vomit. You don't have to, lap it up. You can reflect on, the joy and happiness and love that was there. And, and if you really want to remember somebody who's gone and deceased, you can ask themselves, well, what would they want you to experience right now? Would they want you to experience misery and suffering and jealousy and greed and agitation and all these negatives? Or would they want you to be free and happy? And out of love for them, you can get up out of bed and draw the curtains back and stand up straight with your shoulders back and enjoy life. Give the love that you had for them to others.
Indeed. Now, Grace has joined us and sent lots of love, which is wonderful. And I would like to think that whoever has tuned in, whether it be live now or whether you are watching this down the track, I know for a fact that when people do tune in, there will be a special message for them all. Because there's always a reason, Peter. Sometimes we think the reason might be A and the reason's B or C, but there's always a reason for what we do.
Lovely. Yes. Yes.
So I thank you very, very much for giving up your time this morning. And
well, it's not really a giving up, is it?
Well, no, that's making time.
But even that, I mean, the time's there, isn't it? Like, it's just, you know,
How
the
you're
idea
choosing.
Yeah, like to be here, you know, to be here now. I mean, where else can you be? You know, wherever you go, there you are. So it's been a pleasure, Annette, and you know, I love being with you and talking to you. And you know, you know, my mum is probably there picking her nose at the moment. So, whoops, sorry, Mum. No, my mother doesn't. No, my mother doesn't pick her nose.
She won't appreciate that comment.
No, she won't. No, she's.
You only put that in just to make sure that she watches.
I look to see if she comes back to me and if she's listened to it all.
Now, Grace is saying, what a beautiful conversation, especially that last comment. Last night I was at a show called Nights of Grief and Mystery, and this morning here you are speaking about grief.
Yes, well, thank you for joining us, Grace. I'm sure you've been through your own stuff, and I do hope that you know, Annette and I sharing this morning, you know, does lift the burden of sorrow, so that the sparrows of sorrow don't nest in your hair, or you can, you know, you get out the decoray and wash them out. What was that in South Pacific? I'm going to wash that man right out of my hair. Well,
yes.
You can wash that sorrow right out of your hair, and breathe in and out, and you know, it is too short. I mean, whoever we've lost, we're going to be joining them soon. Well, even you know, if that's the model of the world, if that's how it works, well, we will be. Certainly, a lot of people say that's the case. It's a you know, behoves us to try and find out what is true, and but regardless, you know, love and peace and bliss and happiness is available now to us right now, and we don't. The only thing that we really have to give up is all the holding on to anger and agitation and negative ideas and misery and sorrow. Yeah. So, thank you.
My
Grace.
pleasure. And Grace's surname happens to be Bird. And she said, bird, sparrows are welcome.
Great. You have, you know, it's just such, that's amazing, Grace.
Yeah.
Ho, ho, ho.
And there we are. We've shifted the energy yet again. So thank you, Peter. Thank you, everybody, for choosing to join us here at the moment. And we hope that we've given you something to laugh about, things to reflect, and may we all move forward being the best that we possibly can be. Much love to Rosemary and everybody else out there. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Annette. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.